The council chamber stretched high above the representatives, a massive dome of transparent steel that showed the stars beyond. Hundreds of species sat in their designated sections, each one different from the last. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur or skin or something else entirely. But they all shared one thing today. They were about to make a decision that would doom an entire race. Day One sat in the human section, his hands folded on the table before him. He had been Earth's representative for 3 years now, and he thought he had seen everything the galaxy could throw at him. Political games, trade disputes, territorial arguments. But this was different. This was about life and death. At the center of the chamber stood Tylris. The Velothi ambassador was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Right now, that glow was a pale blue, flickering like a candle in the wind. Day One had learned that blue meant sadness for the Velothi, deep, crushing sadness. "Please," Tylris said, his voice carrying through the chamber's speakers. "We do not have much time. The radiation wave will reach our world in 6 months, maybe less. We cannot stop it. We cannot survive it. We need help to evacuate our people." A representative from the Korthan Empire stood up. He was massive with 4 arms and gray skin like stone. "The Velothi sector is too close to our borders. We cannot allow millions of refugees to pass through our space. It would be a security risk." Tylris's skin flickered brighter blue. "We have been neighbors for 200 years. We have never threatened you." "Not once." "Times change," the Korthan said and sat down. Another representative rose, this one from a species that looked like floating jellyfish in a tank of water. Her voice bubbled through a translator. "The cost would be too high. Our ships are needed elsewhere. We cannot spare them for an evacuation of this size." One by one, they stood up. One by one, they gave their reasons. Too expensive. Too dangerous. Too far away. Not our problem. The Velothi had nothing to trade, nothing to offer. They were a peaceful people who had never developed weapons or built a strong fleet. They had believed in diplomacy and kindness. Now that belief was going to kill them. Day One watched Tylris's skin grow darker, the blue deepening until it was almost black. He saw the Velothi ambassador's hands shake. He thought about the reports he had read. 2.3 million Velothi lived on their world. Families, children, artists and teachers and farmers, people who laughed and loved and dreamed, just like humans did. The vote was called. Species after species pressed their buttons. The holographic display showed the results in real time. Reject, reject, reject. The word appeared over and over, glowing red in the air. When Earth's turn came, Day One pressed his button without hesitation. Accept. The word appeared in green, alone among a sea of red. The council leader, an ancient being that looked like a tree made of crystal, spoke slowly. "The vote is complete. The Galactic Council will not provide aid to Valara. This session is—" "Wait!" Day One stood up. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. "Humanity will provide aid. We will evacuate the Velothi people." Silence filled the chamber. Then someone laughed. It was the Korthan representative. "You? Earth barely has enough ships for your own colonies. You think you can evacuate millions?" "We'll find a way," Day One said. "Foolish," another voice called out. "You'll waste resources on a dying race. They have nothing to give you in return." Day One looked at Tylris. The Velothi's skin had changed to yellow now, bright and surprised. "They're people," Day One said simply. "That's enough." He sat down. The session ended. Representatives filed out, many of them shaking their heads or making sounds that might have been laughter in their languages. Day One stayed in his seat, wondering if he had just made a promise that humanity couldn't keep. Tylris approached him slowly. Up close, Day One could see that the Velothi was crying. The tears glowed golden as they ran down his face. "Why?" Telris asked. "Your people do not know us. We cannot repay you. Why would you do this?" Daewon thought about his grandmother. She had been a refugee once, fleeing from war in her home country. Strangers had taken her in, given her food and shelter, asked for nothing in return. She had told him that story many times before she died. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said. 3 days later, Captain Jiwon received her orders. She stood on the bridge of the Persistence, reading the message on her datapad. Behind her, her crew worked at their stations, running checks and preparing for departure. They didn't know yet where they were going. "Attention," Jiwon said, and the bridge went quiet. "We have new orders. We're going to Valara." Her first officer, a young man named Minho, looked up from his console. "The dying world? I heard the council rejected the aid request." "They did," Jiwon said. "Earth didn't. We're going to evacuate the Valathi people, all of them." Minho's eyes went wide. "All of them? Captain, we're a cargo hauler. We can carry maybe 2,000 people if we pack them in tight. We're not going alone." Jiwon pulled up a star chart on the main screen. It showed dozens of ships, all heading toward the same point in space. "Earth is sending every ship we can spare. Military vessels, colony transports, cargo haulers, even private yachts. Anyone who volunteered." She zoomed in on the fleet list. There were names she recognized. The Hope's Light, an old colony ship that should have been retired years ago. The Mercy, a hospital ship. The Promise, a mining vessel. Ships that were never meant to carry people, being refitted and sent out anyway. "How many can we save?" someone asked from the back of the bridge. Jiwon looked at the numbers. "If everything goes perfectly, maybe all of them. If things go wrong—" She didn't finish the sentence. Dr. Hyun entered the bridge carrying a medical kit. She was the Persistence's chief medical officer, and she looked tired. "I've been reading about Valathi biology," she said. "They need different air than we do, more humidity, different nutrients. We'll have to modify our life support systems." "Can you do it?" Jiwon asked. "I'll have to." Hyun looked at the star chart. "How long until we reach Valara?" 2 weeks at maximum speed. "The radiation wave will reach them in 6 months, Hyun said quietly. "We'll be cutting it close." "We'll make it," Jiwon said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. She looked at her crew, seeing the doubt on their faces. But she also saw determination. They were human. They had voted to help. Now they had to follow through, no matter how impossible it seemed. The Persistence broke orbit that night, joining the growing fleet. Other ships appeared beside them, dozens at first, then hundreds. Not just Earth ships, but vessels from human colonies across the galaxy. They had heard about the mission. They had volunteered. Jiwon stood at the window of her quarters, watching the ships fly in formation. Somewhere ahead, in the darkness of space, the Valathi people waited. They didn't know yet that help was coming. They didn't know that one species in all the galaxy had decided they were worth saving. But they would know soon. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel above Valara, and the crew of the Persistence got their first look at the dying world. It was beautiful. The planet glowed blue and green, with white clouds swirling across its surface. Cities dotted the continents, their lights visible even from orbit. It looked peaceful. It looked alive. But the sensors told a different story. The radiation wave was closer than expected. It would hit in 4 months now, not 6. The timeline had just gotten much shorter. "Get me a channel to the surface," Captain Jiwon ordered. "Let them know we're here." Within minutes, the main screen showed Tylris. The Valathi ambassador's skin was bright yellow, almost glowing with surprise and hope. Behind him, other Valathi crowded around, all of them staring at the screen with wide eyes. "You came," Tylris said, his voice shaking. "We saw the reports from the council. We thought we would die here." "Not today," Ji-won said. "We need to start evacuations immediately. Send us coordinates for your population centers. We'll begin landing ships within the hour." Talrus pressed his hands together, a gesture that seemed like a prayer. "Thank you. Thank you. We will never forget this." The fleet split up, each ship taking a different city or town. The Persistence headed for the capital, a sprawling city of crystal towers that reflected the sunlight in rainbow colors. As they descended through the atmosphere, Dr. Hyun joined Ji-won on the bridge. "I've finished the modifications to our cargo holds," Hyun said. "We can take 3,000 velati if we're careful, maybe more if we have to." "Good work," Ji-won said. "What about food? Water?" "Their biology is similar enough to ours. They can eat most of what we eat, drink our water. But they need supplements. Minerals we don't use. I'm working on synthesizing them." The ship landed in a wide plaza near the city center. The loading ramp opened, and Ji-won walked down with a small team. She had expected chaos, panic, people fighting to get on the ships first. Instead, she found order. The Velothi had formed lines. Families stood together carrying small bags of belongings. Children held their parents' hands. Everyone was quiet, their skin glowing in different colors. Blue for sadness, orange for fear, but also yellow for hope and green for gratitude. Lieutenant Minho organized the boarding teams. He had worked in refugee relief before joining the military, and it showed. He moved through the crowd, checking identification, making sure families stayed together, helping the elderly and the sick. A young Velothi girl approached Ji-won. She barely came up to the captain's waist, and her skin flickered between orange and yellow. "Are you really going to save us?" the girl asked. Ji-won knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, all of you. Even though we can't pay you, you don't need to pay us." The girl's skin turned bright yellow. She threw her arms around Ji-won's neck, hugging her tight. Over the girl's shoulder, Ji-won saw other Velothi watching. Many of them were crying those golden tears. The loading process took hours. The Persistence filled up quickly, then filled up more. They packed people into every available space, set up temporary bunks in the corridors, converted storage rooms into living quarters. When they finally lifted off, they were carrying 3,200 Velothi. The ship groaned under the weight, but it held. Back in orbit, Engineer Suna was working on the next problem. The life support systems were straining. They hadn't been designed to support this many people. She climbed through access tunnels, replacing filters, rerouting power, pushing the systems beyond their normal limits. "Suna, you need to rest," her assistant said over the radio. "You've been working for 16 hours straight." "I'll rest when everyone is safe," Suna replied, pulling herself through another tight space. Her back ached, and her hands were scraped and bleeding from the sharp edges of the machinery. But she kept working. On the ground, more ships landed. The Hope's Light took 3,500 people. The Mercy took 2,000, most of them sick or injured. Smaller vessels took hundreds each. The evacuation was working, but it was slow. Too slow. Dr. Hyun stood in the medical bay, treating a Velothi woman who had collapsed from stress. The woman's skin had turned a dark purple, a color Hyun had learned meant illness. As she worked, a young Velothi female entered the bay. She wore simple clothes and carried a bag filled with medical supplies. "Can I help?" the Velothi asked. Hyun looked up. "Do you have medical training?" "I am a healer on my world. I do not know your medicine, but I can learn." "What's your name?" "Lyra Sen." Hyun smiled. "Welcome to the team, Lyra Sen. Let me show you how our equipment works." They worked side by side for the next several days. Lyra Sen learned quickly, her long fingers adapting to human medical tools. She taught Hyun about Velothi biology, explaining things no textbook had mentioned. When Velothi patients saw her in the medical bay, their skin brightened. It comforted them to see one of their own people helping. "Why do humans do this?" Lyrasen asked one night, during a rare break. "Your people are risking so much for us." Yun thought about it. "We've been refugees before. A long time ago, humans were scattered across one planet, fighting each other, running from wars and disasters. We remember what it was like to need help, to be afraid and alone. But you could have said no, like the others." "We could have," Hyun agreed. "But we didn't want to. That's the difference." After 2 months, they had evacuated 800,000 Velothi. It was progress, but not enough. 1.5 million people still waited on the surface, and the radiation wave was getting closer. The sensors showed 2 months left, maybe less. Then the problem started. Ships broke down from overuse. The Hope's Light lost an engine and had to be towed back to orbit. The Promise developed a leak in its hull and couldn't land anymore. Food supplies ran low. Medical supplies ran out. Engineer Suna pushed herself harder. She moved from ship to ship, fixing problems, jury-rigging solutions, keeping the fleet running through sheer determination. But she was exhausted. She made a mistake while repairing a power coupling on the Mercy. The coupling exploded, throwing her backward into a bulkhead. She felt something break in her side. Pain shot through her ribs. She gasped, unable to breathe for a moment. Her assistant found her sitting against the wall, her face pale. "You're hurt," the assistant said. "We need to get you to medical." "No time," Suna said, forcing herself to stand. "The repairs aren't finished." "Suna, I said no time." She picked up her tools and kept working, even though every breath felt like fire in her chest. On Valara, the situation was getting desperate. The radiation levels were rising. People on the planet's northern continent were getting sick. Lieutenant Minho organized emergency evacuations, working through the night to pull people out of the danger zones. He carried a Velothi child through a damaged building, the structure shaking from earthquakes caused by the approaching radiation wave. The child's parents had been killed in the collapse. The boy clung to Minho's uniform, his skin dark blue with grief and fear. "It's okay," Minho said, even though he knew the child probably couldn't understand his words. "I've got you. You're safe now." He thought about his own grandmother, who had fled from war as a child. Strangers had saved her, carried her to safety. Now he was doing the same for this boy. The cycle continued. They reached the landing zone as another earthquake hit. Minho stumbled but kept his footing, holding the child tight. A ship waited, its ramp down. He ran up the ramp and handed the boy to a waiting crew member. "One more saved," Minho said. "How many more to go?" the crew member asked. Minho looked back at the city, at the thousands of Velothi still waiting in lines, still hoping for rescue. The sky was starting to turn strange colors as radiation particles hit the upper atmosphere. "Too many," he said quietly. "Way too many." Back in orbit, Captain Jiwon studied the numbers. They had evacuated almost 1 million people now. But time was running out. The radiation wave would hit in 6 weeks. At their current pace, they would save maybe half the remaining Velothi. The other half would die. She called a meeting of all the ship captains. Their faces appeared on screens around her, human men and women from dozens of different colonies. They all looked as tired as she felt. "We need to go faster," Jiwon said. "We need to take more risks. Overload the ships, skip safety checks, push everything to the limit." "Captain," one of them said, "if we do that, we'll lose ships. People will die." "If we don't," Jiwon replied, "1 million Velothi will die. We didn't come all this way to save half of them. We're going to save them all, whatever it takes." The captains agreed. The fleet pushed harder. Ships took on more passengers than they could safely carry. Crews worked without rest. Corners were cut, safety margins ignored. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was the only way. The human fleet gathered in orbit above Valara, their ships packed with Velothi refugees. They had evacuated 1.9 million people. Only 400,000 remained on the surface, and the radiation wave was now just 3 weeks away. The northern continent was already uninhabitable. People were dying down there, their bodies unable to handle the increasing radiation. Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of the Persistence, staring at the sensor display. A new problem had appeared. A big problem. "Confirm that reading," she ordered. "Confirmed, Captain," her sensor officer said. "Korthan battle fleet, 30 ships blocking our exit route." Jiwan felt her stomach sink. The Korthan Empire had made good on their threat. They had positioned their warships between the human fleet and safe space, preventing the evacuation from continuing. A message came through. The face of a Korthan commander appeared on screen. He was massive, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red. "Human vessels," he said, "you are in violation of Korthan territorial space. You will turn back immediately." "We're on a humanitarian mission," Jiwan replied. "We're not a threat to your empire. You are bringing millions of refugees toward our borders. That is a threat. Turn back, or we will fire on you." The channel closed. Jiwan looked at her crew. They all knew what this meant. If they turned back, the remaining Velothi would die. If they tried to fight, the human fleet would be destroyed. Most of their ships were transports, not warships. They had maybe 3 military vessels total, and they were small ones. "Options?" Jiwan asked. Lieutenant Minho pulled up a star chart. "We could take a different route, go around Korthan space, but that would add 2 weeks to the journey. The radiation wave will hit in 3 weeks. So that's not an option." "No, Captain." Dr. Hyun entered the bridge, supporting Engineer Suna. The engineer looked terrible, pale and sweating. She could barely stand. "Suna, what are you doing up here?" Jiwan asked. "You should be in medical." "Had to tell you something," Suna gasped. "The ships can't take another route. Half of them are barely holding together. 2 more weeks of travel. They'll fall apart." "I ordered you to medical bay," Dr. Hyun said firmly. "You have 3 broken ribs and internal bleeding." "After," Suna said stubbornly. "After we save everyone." Jiwan made her decision. "We go through. Get me a channel to all ships." Within minutes, every captain in the fleet was listening. Jiwan took a breath. "The Korthan have blockaded us. We have 2 choices. Go around and watch our ships fall apart, or go through and hope they don't fire. I'm choosing to go through. Any ship that wants to turn back can do so now. No judgment." She waited. Not a single ship broke formation. "All right then," Jiwan said. "Here's the plan. We go all at once. Every ship, maximum speed, straight through their line. They won't be able to stop all of us. Some will get through." "Some?" someone asked. "What about the others?" Jiwan didn't answer. She didn't need to. On the surface, Lieutenant Minho was loading the last refugees. The evacuation site was chaos now. The ground shook constantly. The sky had turned purple and green, filled with radiation. People were panicking, pushing forward, desperate to get on the ships. Minho and his team worked as fast as they could. They pulled people up the ramps, packed them into every available space. The ship he was on, the Hope's Light, was already over capacity. The old colony ship groaned under the weight. A Velothi woman thrust her child into Minho's arms. "Please," she begged. "Take her. There's no room for me, but take her." "Ma'am, we're not leaving anyone. Please!" The woman's skin flashed bright orange with terror. "Save my daughter!" Minho took the child. The little girl reached back toward her mother, crying those golden tears. The woman stepped back into the crowd, her skin turning blue. Minho wanted to go after her, to pull her onto the ship too, but more people were pushing forward. The ship was full, overfull. They had to launch now, or they wouldn't make it at all. "Close the ramp," he ordered, hating himself. The Hope's light lifted off, leaving 3,000 Velothi still on the ground. Minho watched through a window as they got smaller and smaller. Some of them were waving. Some had fallen to their knees. He turned away, holding the crying child close. The fleet assembled in high orbit. Every ship was packed beyond capacity. The Persistence had 4,200 people on board, and it showed. The corridors were filled with refugees. The air was stale and hot. Life support systems screamed warnings on every console. In the medical bay, Dr. Hyun finally forced Suna to lie down. The engineer had collapsed after giving her report to the captain. Hyun started emergency surgery, her hands steady even though her heart was racing. Lyra-sen assisted, passing instruments, monitoring vital signs. "Will she live?" Lyra-sen asked quietly. "If I can stop the internal bleeding," Hyun said. "She pushed herself too far. She's been working injured for weeks." "She did it for us," Lyra-sen said. "She broke herself to save my people." Hyun didn't reply. She focused on the surgery, sealing blood vessels, repairing damage. Suna's life signs were weak but stable. She would live if they got through the blockade. On the bridge, Jiwon gave the order. "All ships, prepare to run the blockade. Maximum speed on my mark." The fleet accelerated. Hundreds of ships, all moving together, heading straight toward the Korthan battle line. The warships ahead of them powered up their weapons. Warning lights flashed on every human console. "They're targeting us," the weapons officer said. "Keep going," Jiwon ordered. The Korthan commander's face appeared on screen again. "This is your last warning. Stop, or we will fire." "We're not stopping," Jiwon said. "We have 2 million refugees on these ships. Families, children. If you fire, their blood is on your hands." She cut the channel. The fleet kept moving. The first shots came from the Korthan warships. Energy beams lanced through space, but they were warning shots, aimed ahead of the human fleet. The Korthan were trying to scare them into stopping. It didn't work. The human ships plunged into the blockade line. Korthan vessels surrounded them, weapons trained on civilian transports. For a moment, nobody fired. The Korthan commander had to make a choice: destroy ships full of refugees or let them pass. Then one of the human ships, the Hope's Light, lost power. Its engines failed, and it drifted to a stop right in the middle of the Korthan formation. Emergency lights flickered along its hull. "This is the Hope's Light," Minho's voice came over the radio. "We've lost engines. All power is gone. Requesting assistance." Korthan boarding ships approached. Soldiers in powered armor attached to the Hope's Light's hull and cut their way inside. They moved through the corridors, weapons ready, expecting resistance. Instead, they found refugees. Thousands of Velothi crowded into every space, their skin glowing with fear. And they found humans, the crew members who had stayed behind to help, who could have taken escape pods but had given them to refugees instead. Minho stood in the corridor, holding the little Velothi girl. Other crew members stood with him, unarmed, surrounded by the people they had been trying to save. The Korthan soldiers stopped, their weapons lowering. The Korthan commander, Vortek, was with the boarding party. He was a veteran of many wars, and he had seen much in his long life, but he had never seen anything like this. Humans standing with refugees, choosing to stay with them even when they could have escaped. "Why did you not evacuate?" Vortek asked Minho. "We only had enough escape pods for the Velothi," Minho said simply. "We're the crew. Our job is to take care of our passengers." Vortek looked around at the crowded corridors, at the refugees pressed together, at the human crew members standing among them. He thought about what his empire had called a security threat. These people, these frightened families. He activated his radio. "All ships, stand down. Let them pass." "Commander?" one of his officers questioned. "Our orders." "I am giving new orders," Vortek said firmly. "These people are not a threat. Let them pass." The Korthan warships moved aside. The blockade opened. Vortex soldiers helped repair the Hope's light, giving it just enough power to limp along with the rest of the fleet. As the human ships passed through, Vortex stood at a window, watching them go. His honor, the warrior's code he had followed all his life, had been challenged by what he saw. The humans had shown him something he had never understood before, that true strength was not in weapons, but in compassion. The human fleet cleared the blockade. Behind them, the Korthan ships held position but did not follow. Ahead lay safe space, and beyond that, sanctuary for the Velothi people. On the Persistence, G1 received casualty reports. 43 human crew members had died, some from equipment failures, some from accidents during the desperate evacuation, some from radiation exposure, having stayed on the surface too long to save just a few more people. 43 people who would never go home. 43 people who had given everything to save strangers. But 2 million Velothi lived. Every single one of them had been evacuated. As news of this spread through the fleet, through the refugee populations crowded into every ship, something amazing happened. The Velothi began to glow, not blue for sadness or orange for fear, but a bright, warm amber. Dr. Hyun asked Lyra Zen what it meant. "Hope," Lyra Zen said, tears running down her glowing face. "That color means hope. We thought we had lost it forever, but your people gave it back to us." The fleet set course for New Haven, a human colony world that had volunteered to take in the refugees. It would be a long journey. Many ships were damaged, supplies were low, but they had done it. They had saved them all. New Haven appeared on the view screens like a promise. The colony world was green and blue, with 2 small moons and rings of ice that caught the sunlight. It was beautiful. But more importantly, it was home to 3 million human colonists who had voted to share their world with refugees. Governor Tajin stood at the spaceport, watching the first ships land. He was an older man, his hair gray, his face lined with years of hard work building this colony. Now he was about to see that work tested in ways he had never imagined. The ramp of the Persistence lowered, and Velothi began to walk down. They moved slowly, uncertain, their skin flickering through different colors. Many of them had never left their home world before. Everything here was strange to them. The gravity was slightly different. The air smelled wrong. The sun was a different color. Tylris was among the first to step onto New Haven's soil. He looked around at the human colonists who had gathered to welcome them, then up at the sky, then back at Governor Tajin. His skin turned bright yellow. "Thank you," Tylris said. "Thank you for giving us a home." Tajin smiled, though his heart was heavy with worry. "Welcome to New Haven. We'll do everything we can to help you settle here." Over the next week, 2 million Velothi landed on New Haven. The human colonists had prepared as best they could. They had set up temporary housing in warehouses and community centers. They had stockpiled food and medical supplies, but nothing could have fully prepared them for this. The colony's infrastructure groaned under the sudden population increase. Power grids struggled to keep up. Water treatment plants ran at maximum capacity. Medical facilities were overwhelmed with Velothi who were sick from radiation exposure or the stress of evacuation. Dr. Hyun set up medical centers throughout the colony. She worked with Lyra Sen and other Velothi healers, combining human and Velothi medicine. Engineer Suna, still recovering from her injuries, helped modify buildings to make them more suitable for Velothi physiology. The colonists tried their best. They donated furniture and clothes, they shared their homes, taking in Velothi families, but the strain was showing. Food supplies, which had been calculated for 3 million humans, now had to feed 5 million people. Rationing began. A human woman named Soman stood in the town square holding a sign that read, "We can't save everyone." Other colonists gathered around her, their faces angry. My children are going hungry, Soman shouted. We're giving away our food to aliens while our own people suffer. This is wrong. A crowd formed. Some people agreed with her, others argued back. The peaceful colony was beginning to fracture. Governor Tejin called a public meeting. The town hall was packed, humans and Velathi crowded together. The air was tense. Tejin stood at the podium, looking out at the worried faces. I know things are hard right now, he began. I know we're all making sacrifices, but I want you to remember something. He pulled out an old photograph and projected it onto the screen behind him. It showed a group of refugees, humans, standing in front of a transport ship. They looked tired and scared, just like the Velathi did now. This was taken 150 years ago, Tejin said. These people were fleeing from Earth during the resource wars. They had nothing. No food, no homes, no hope. They landed on a colony called Haven Station. The people there could have turned them away. They were struggling too. But they didn't. They shared what they had. They helped these refugees build new lives. He pointed to one of the people in the photograph. This woman was my great-great-grandmother. If Haven Station had turned her away, I wouldn't be here today. None of us would be here. This colony exists because people chose compassion over fear. The crowd was quiet now, listening. The Velathi can't go home, Tejin continued. Their world is gone. If we turn them away, where will they go? Who will take them if we won't? We're not just saving lives here. We're deciding what kind of people we want to be. Soman stood up. But what about our children? What about us? We'll figure it out together, Tejin said. All of us, human and Velathi. We're all people of New Haven now. Not everyone was convinced, but the protests stopped. The colony tried to adapt. Humans and Velathi worked together to expand farming operations. They built new housing. They found ways to stretch resources further. But it wasn't enough. 3 months after the refugees arrived, the food shortage was getting critical. People were hungry. Children cried at night. The medical centers were treating cases of malnutrition. Tylris called a meeting with the other Velathi leaders. His skin was dark blue, the deepest sadness. We cannot let humans starve because of us, he said. We should reduce our rations. Give more food to the humans. We're already on reduced rations, another Velathi pointed out. If we eat less, we'll die. Better some of us die than all of us be a burden, Tylris said. The Velathi agreed to cut their food intake by half. When Governor Tejin found out, he was furious. He went to the Velathi settlement and found Tylris. What are you doing? Tejin demanded. You can't starve yourselves. We will not let your children go hungry because of us, Tylris said quietly. You saved us. The least we can do is— No. Tejin's voice was firm. We didn't save you so you could die here. We'll find another way. But what way? The colony had already tried everything. They had planted more crops, but crops took time to grow. They had contacted other human colonies for help. But most were struggling with their own problems. Earth could send supplies, but it would take months for ships to arrive. The solution came from an unexpected source. Lyrasen was working in the medical center when a human farmer came in complaining about sick plants. She examined samples and realized something. I can feel the sickness in these plants, she told Dr. Hyun. It's like an emotion, a wrongness. You can feel it? Hyun asked. All Velathi can. We are empathic. We feel the emotions of living things around us. Plants have emotions too, just very simple ones. Hyun's eyes widened. Can you tell what's wrong with them? Lyrasen touched the plant sample, closing her eyes. Something in the soil. A fungus. It's spreading through the roots. Hyun ran tests. Lyrasen was right. A fungal infection had been slowly killing crops across the colony, reducing yields by 30%. The farmers hadn't known because the symptoms didn't show until it was too late. Within days, Velothi healers were working in the fields alongside human farmers. They could sense plant diseases before they became visible. They could tell when soil was depleted, when plants needed water, when pests were present. Crop yields began to increase dramatically. A young human farmer named Bora worked with a Velothi named Velin. At first, she was skeptical. But when Velin showed her problems in her fields that she had never seen, problems that would have destroyed her entire harvest, she became a believer. "This is incredible," Bora said, watching Velin move through the crops, his hands glowing slightly as he sensed each plant. "You can feel all of this?" "Yes," Velin said. "On our world, we use this ability for gardening. We never thought it would be useful for large-scale farming. It's more than useful, it's revolutionary." Word spread. More farmers requested Velothi helpers. The food shortage began to ease. Within 6 months, New Haven's farms were producing more food than ever before. The colony went from struggling to thriving. But it wasn't just farming. Velothi empathy had other uses. They could sense when people were sick before symptoms appeared. They could help with therapy, feeling the emotions that patients couldn't express. They could work with animals, calming them and understanding their needs. The Velothi weren't a burden. They were a gift. Soman, who had led the protests, came to Governor Tajin's office. She looked embarrassed. "I was wrong," she said. "I was scared, and I let fear make me cruel. The Velothi have helped us more than we've helped them." "We helped each other," Tajin said gently. "That's how it's supposed to work." A year after the evacuation, New Haven held a joint celebration. Humans and Velothi gathered in the town square. There was music, both human and Velothi styles. There was food, new dishes that combined both cultures. There was dancing and laughter. Captain Jiwon was there, along with Dr. Hyun, Engineer Suna, and Lieutenant Minho. They watched the celebration from a quiet corner, tired but happy. "We did it," Minho said softly. "We did," Jiwon agreed, "but at a cost." They all thought of the 43 crew members who had died during the evacuation. A memorial had been built for them, a simple stone wall with their names carved into it. The Velothi visited it every day, leaving flowers that glowed in the dark. Lyrasen approached them, her skin a warm amber color. "Captain Jiwon, the Velothi Council wants to speak with you." Jiwon followed her to the council chambers. Tylris and other Velothi leaders waited there. Their skin was bright yellow, almost blinding. "Captain," Tylris said, "we have been discussing how to thank your people. We know we can never truly repay what you've done, but we want to try." "You don't need to," Jiwon began. "Please, let us do this," Tylris interrupted. "We have decided to share our knowledge with humanity. Our empathic abilities, our understanding of living things, our culture. We want to teach you everything we know, and in return, we hope to learn from you." "A true partnership," Jiwon said. "Yes, equals helping equals. Friends helping friends." Tylris extended his hand, a gesture he had learned from humans. Jiwon took it. His skin flashed through a rainbow of colors, settling on a soft green. Gratitude. Back on Earth, Daewon stood in the Galactic Council chambers. The other representatives were watching recordings from New Haven. They saw humans and Velothi working together. They saw the thriving farms, the growing cities, the children of both species playing together. "Remarkable," one representative said. "The Velothi have adapted well." "Because the humans gave them a chance," Daewon replied, "something the rest of you refused to do." Silence fell over the chamber. Many representatives looked ashamed. The Korthan representative, Vortek himself, stood up. "I have watched the humans closely since the blockade incident," Vortek said. I have seen something that our empire forgot long ago. Honor is not just in battle. It is in caring for the weak, in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The humans remembered this. We did not. He turned to Daewon. I request that the Korthan Empire be allowed to contribute to the Haven Initiative. We wish to learn from your example. One by one, other species stood up. They asked to join. They wanted to help. They had seen what humanity had done, and it had changed them. The galaxy was watching, and the galaxy was learning. 5 years had passed since the evacuation of Valera. New Haven had transformed from a struggling colony into one of the most prosperous worlds in human space. The city that had once housed 3 million now held 5 million in comfort, with room to grow. Captain Jiwon walked through the streets, barely recognized despite her role in the evacuation. She preferred it that way. Around her, humans and Velothi moved together, shopping at markets, talking at cafes, living ordinary lives. Children of both species played in the parks, their laughter mixing in the air. She stopped at a memorial. The Wall of the 43, they called it. 43 names carved into black stone, lit from below by lights that the Velothi had designed. They glowed with a soft amber light, the color of hope. Fresh flowers lay at the base, as they did every day. You did well, Jiwon said quietly to the names. They're safe, all of them. A young Velothi girl approached, no more than 10 years old. She placed a flower at the wall, her skin glowing soft blue for a moment before shifting to green. She looked up at Jiwon. Did you know them? The girl asked. The heroes? Some of them, Jiwon said. They were my crew. My mama says they gave their lives for us, that they could have run away, but they didn't. That's true. Why? The girl asked. Why would they do that for strangers? Jiwon knelt down to the child's level. She had been asked this question many times over the years, by many different people. The answer never changed. Because you needed help, and they were able to help. That's all the reason they needed. The girl thought about this, her skin flickering through different colors. Then she smiled, that universal expression that crossed all species. When I grow up, I want to be like them. I think you will be, Jiwon said. She stood up and continued her walk. She was heading to the spaceport, where a ceremony was about to begin. A new ship was being launched, the first vessel built jointly by humans and Velothi. It combined human engineering with Velothi biological systems, creating something neither species could have made alone. Dr. Hyun waited at the spaceport, standing with Lyrazen. The two of them had become close friends over the years, working together on dozens of projects. They had published papers that revolutionized xenobiology. They had developed new medical techniques that saved lives across multiple species. Nervous? Hyun asked. Lyrasen's skin flickered orange for just a moment. A little. It's our first presentation to the Galactic Council. You'll do great. Your research is solid. They were traveling to the council headquarters to present their findings on empathic medical diagnosis. Several species had expressed interest in learning Velothi techniques. The galaxy was slowly realizing that the Velothi, whom they had written off as weak and useless, had gifts that no other species possessed. Engineer Suna arrived next, walking with only a slight limp. Her injuries had healed mostly. She still had pain sometimes, especially when it rained, but she never regretted pushing herself to save the Velothi. She wore her scars with pride. She had been working on a new project combining human technology with Velothi empathic interfaces. The result was machines that could sense the needs of living things around them, farming equipment that knew when plants needed water, medical scanners that could detect illness before symptoms appeared, ships that could feel damage and report it to crews. The prototype is ready, Suna told Jiwon. We can begin testing next month. Good work, Jiwon said. Have you thought about what you'll call it? Suna smiled. The Velothi want to call it the Persistence System, after your ship. Jiwon felt her throat tighten with emotion. I'd be honored. Lieutenant Minho was the last to arrive. He wasn't a lieutenant anymore. He had left the military 2 years ago to start a refugee assistance program. The Minho Initiative, as it was called, helped displaced peoples across the galaxy find new homes and rebuild their lives. He carried a young Velothi girl with him, the same girl whose mother had pushed her into his arms during the evacuation. Her name was Sela, and he had adopted her after learning her mother had died on Valara. She was his daughter now, in every way that mattered. Papa, is that the new ship? Sela asked, pointing at the vessel on the launch pad. Yes, baby. That's the Unity. Beautiful, isn't she? The ship was indeed beautiful. It had the sleek lines of human engineering but was covered in a living skin that the Velothi had designed. The skin glowed softly, colors shifting across its surface. It looked alive, because in some ways it was. The launch ceremony began. Governor Tajin gave a speech about cooperation and friendship. Tylris spoke about gratitude and second chances. But the person everyone wanted to hear from was Captain Jiwon. She stood at the podium looking out at the crowd. Thousands of people, human and Velothi, waited to hear her words. She had never been comfortable with public speaking, but this was important. 5 years ago, she began, we made a choice. We chose to help people who needed us. Some said we were foolish. They said the Velothi had nothing to offer, that we were wasting resources on a dying species. She paused, looking at the Velothi in the crowd. Their skin glowed with different colors, but most showed green. Gratitude. They were wrong. The Velothi weren't weak. They weren't useless. They were people, with gifts and knowledge and so much to give. We just had to give them a chance to show us. She gestured to the Unity. This ship represents what we've built together. Human strength and Velothi sensitivity. Human technology and Velothi wisdom. Alone, neither of us could have created this. Together, we've made something amazing. The crowd applauded. Jiwon smiled and stepped down from the podium. The Unity launched shortly after, rising into the sky on pillars of light, heading out to its first mission, rescuing refugees from a war-torn world in the Gamma sector. Far away in the Galactic Council chambers, Daewon sat in his new seat. He was the council chair now, elected 2 years ago by a majority vote. It was the first time a human had held the position, and he took the responsibility seriously. The council had changed. The old system, where species could vote to abandon those in need, had been reformed. Now there was the Haven Initiative, a mutual aid agreement signed by 70 species. If any member faced disaster, the others were obligated to help. Vortex sat in the Corthan section. He had resigned his military command to become a representative, dedicating his life to promoting the honor code he had rediscovered during the blockade. He and Daewon had become unlikely friends. The proposal from New Haven has passed, Daewon announced. The joint human Velothi agricultural program will be shared with all member species. The Corthan Empire is grateful, Vortex said. Our farms have struggled for decades. This knowledge will save lives. That's what the initiative is for, Daewon replied. Helping each other. On New Haven, in a small research lab, a group of young people worked together. 3 humans and 2 Velothi, all of them barely out of university. They were developing new technology, combining their species' strengths. One of them was Bora's daughter, Hana. She had grown up with Velothi friends, learning their language and culture. To her, there was no difference between humans and Velothi. They were all just people. I think we've got it, Hana said excitedly. A ship drive that uses empathic navigation. It can sense gravitational fields and navigate around them automatically. That would revolutionize space travel, one of the Velothi said, his skin bright yellow with excitement. Let's test it. They worked late into the night, these children of two species, building a future that neither species could have imagined alone. This was humanity's true legacy, not just saving the Velothi, but showing the galaxy what cooperation could achieve. Years later, Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of a new ship, not the Persistence, which had been retired to a museum, but a vessel 100 times its size. The Federation, they called it, a joint project of 20 species, designed to respond to disasters anywhere in the galaxy. Vortex served as her second-in-command, the former warrior now dedicated to saving lives instead of taking them. The crew was mixed, humans and Velothi and Korthan and dozens of other species, all working together. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call," the communications officer reported. "The planet Nerva. Volcanic eruptions. They need immediate evacuation." Jiwan looked at Vortex. He nodded. She smiled. "Set course for Nerva. Maximum speed. Let's go save some people." The Federation jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward another world in need. Behind them, dozens of other ships followed. The rescue fleet that humanity had started with the Velothi had grown into something greater. A galaxy-wide network of species dedicated to helping each other. Back on Earth, in a classroom, a teacher showed students a holographic display. It showed the evacuation of Valara, the desperate run through the blockade, the settlement on New Haven. The students watched with wide eyes. "This is why we learn about the Velothi crisis," the teacher said. "Not because it was the biggest disaster or the most difficult rescue, but because it changed everything. It showed us who we wanted to be." A student raised her hand. "Teacher, why did we help when no one else would?" The teacher smiled. It was the same question that had been asked for years, and the answer was always the same. Because they needed help, and we were able to help. That's all the reason we ever needed. On New Haven, now called Haven by most people, the wall of the 43 still stood. Flowers were placed there every day by people who had never met the fallen crew members. The amber lights still glowed, maintained by volunteers from both species. At the base of the wall, a new plaque had been added. It read, "Here are remembered the 43 humans who gave their lives to save the Velothi people. They showed us that true strength lies not in weapons or power, but in compassion and sacrifice. They changed not just 2 species, but an entire galaxy. We honor their memory by living as they did, helping those in need, standing with the vulnerable, refusing to abandon those who have been abandoned. This is humanity's gift to the stars." Below the plaque, children played. Human children and Velothi children and Korthan children and children of a dozen other species. They didn't see differences. They just saw friends. An elderly Velothi sat on a bench nearby, watching the children play. It was Telris, much older now, his skin faded with age. But his eyes were still bright, and when he saw the children laughing together, his skin glowed soft amber. Hope. That was what humanity had given his people. Not just survival, but hope. The belief that tomorrow could be better, the knowledge that someone cared. Talris closed his eyes and remembered the day the human fleet had arrived above his dying world. He remembered thinking his people were doomed. He remembered the shock when humanity voted to help, alone against the galaxy's indifference. He remembered Captain Jiwan's words. "We're not stopping. We're not leaving anyone behind." They had kept that promise. Every single one. A young couple walked by, a human man and a Velothi woman holding hands. Such things were common now. Mixed relationships, mixed families, mixed communities. The lines between species had blurred until they barely existed. This was humanity's true legacy. Not ships or technology or empires, but this, the simple act of caring, of seeing someone in need and choosing to help, regardless of cost, regardless of benefit. The galaxy had learned that lesson. Slowly, painfully, but they had learned. And it had all started with one decision, made in a council chamber, when humanity stood alone and said, "We will help them." 3 words that changed everything. Talrus opened his eyes and smiled. The children were still playing, their laughter echoing across the park. Human laughter and Velothi laughter and Korthan laughter, all mixed together into one joyful sound. This was worth it. All of it. The fear, the pain, the loss. It had all been worth it to reach this moment, to see hope alive and thriving, to see a galaxy learning to care. The sun set over New Haven, painting the sky in colors that reminded Talrus of his lost homeworld. But he felt no sadness. Valara was gone, but the Velothi lived. They thrived. They had found a new home, new friends, a new future. And it was all because one species, when everyone else turned away, had chosen compassion over convenience, had chosen to help, had chosen to care. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And it was a gift that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Ooh.